Committee substitute for Senate Bill 484 relating generally to taxation. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Ferns moved to amend the bill by striking out
The
everything
senator from
after the
Ohio.
enacting clause.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Senator from Ohio requests unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment is essentially the governor's proposed tax increases in their entirety. And I think I saw some of the sheets circulating around the chamber earlier, so I think most of you have this. But in case you haven't, I'll read off what all is included here. We have raising the general rate of sales and use tax by 1/4% to 6.25%, and reverting to 6% in 2020 if funds in the Revenue Shortfall Reserve Fund are at least 15% of the amount in the general fund. It also creates an additional income tax on resident individuals for a period of 1 year. It increases the excise tax on cigarettes to $1.70 per 20 cigarettes. It imposes an excise tax on bottled sugary soft drinks, syrups, and dry mixtures in the amount of 1 cent per ounce for bottled drinks, $13.52 per gallon, $14.27 per 4 liters of syrup, and 17 cents per 1 ounce of dry mix. It eliminates a sales tax credit for expenditures on films produced in West Virginia. It eliminates a sales tax exemption for professional service with certain exceptions. It creates the West Virginia Personal Income Tax Study Commission to study eliminating the personal income tax. It imposes an annual privilege tax on persons conducting any business or commercial activities in the state in the amount of 75/1,000ths of 1% of the gross income of the business. The tax was set to sunset on any year beginning July 1, 2020, that the Revenue Shortfall Reserve Fund exceeds 15% of the General Revenue Fund. And it also raises the barrel tax on non-intoxicating beer from $5.50 per barrel to $8 per barrel. Basically, Mr. President, this is just an opportunity for everybody in this chamber to weigh in, to evaluate the governor's proposed tax increase that he has laid out for us, and to have their feelings known on this proposal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Discussion. The senator from Marion.
Would the gentleman yield?
Senator yield. Senator does yield.
You're representing this amendment as the governor's tax amendment?
The language is the same, yes, sir.
Which one? The first, second, or third one?
What's that? It'll be the second one.
The second one. Well, that's old news. Have you been privy to the working with the governor on the new tax amendments that he's working with the House on?
Has he made those public?
He's invited you down, I know.
Is that a no?
So is that a no?
I'm not aware of any public
well, this
materials
is not the governor's tax proposal. I'm looking at some of the things we discussed. I don't have all in front of me, but this is not the governor's tax proposal.
This is the most recent.
Must be your proposal.
This is the most recent information the governor has sent to the Senate.
Are you going to support this? Are you going to vote for this?
No, sir.
So you're misrepresenting the governor. Is any of your caucus going to vote for it?
This is the most recent proposal the governor has sent to West Virginia
This is not
Senate.
the most recent proposal. There's negotiations ongoing right now with the House. The Senate's been invited. I guess you just don't want to participate.
Well, negotiations are one thing, and what he's actually sent us are completely
Well, this
different.
has changed 3 times since then. I
would
don't know what this
acknowledge-
is. I would, suggest to my caucus not to vote for this. This is not the governor's proposal. It's not the governor's proposal. This is the majority leader's proposal.
Senator, do you have the governor's most recent proposal?
I don't have it with me, but I'd be glad to share it with you.
Has he made that public for anybody?
He's in negotiations right now with the House.
We have no other choice but to act on what the governor has
asking the
sent us most
questions, I
recently.
believe.
Let me
Am I-
finish, if I may. We have no choice but to act on what the governor has actually sent us.
You're just presenting this as a political sham.
Sir, if you're going to ask me to yield, I'm going to need to finish my
I'm going to
question.
ask you to yield.
The senator is
If you would
recognized
answer
to
the
yield
question.
to questions.
Pardon?
The senator from Marion is recognized to ask questions.
Did this go through finance?
This is the most recent version
Did this
of...
go through finance?
Sir, if you're not going
Yes
to
or
let me
no?
finish
It's
your
a
question...
I just want a yes or no.
Mr. President, if I can't finish an answer to
I
a
ask-
question, then I'm not going to
Please,
yield any longer.
the Senator from Marion has asked the question, and the Senator
Yes or
from...
no? Did it go through finance?
Senator from Marion, please allow him to
Did the
answer the question.
Yes or no?
This amendment is the most recent proposal the governor has sent to
not
the West
speak in
Virginia
English?
Senate.
Mr.
Senator,
President, I'd like to address this particular...
Senator from Marion, may
This is
speak to-
not the governor's tax proposal. You know, we're in negotiations right now. It's been all over the news yesterday. It's a total sham. It's a political ploy. The gentleman's going to offer an amendment, and he's not even going to vote for it. I mean, I don't know that I've offered an amendment that I've never voted for. I don't know whether anybody else has. That's about as low as I've seen. The tax proposal has yet to be gleaned in the Finance Committee. Who's in charge of doing the budget? It's not the Judiciary Committee, I don't think. It's the Education Committee. It's the Finance Committee. We've yet to see anything on the Finance Committee. Does the chair of Finance support this? I don't think so. I mean, I don't know how anybody could support this. This is old news. I would suggest our caucus to vote against this. This is a total fraud. It's not the governor's tax proposal. The governor has been in negotiation, willing to talk to the leadership of both houses, and yet, I guess the Senate doesn't want to participate. They continue to run shams like Senate Bill 335, which is ludicrous. Then we get, several other hybrids of some kind of shenanigans. I'm insulted that I'm in this Senate and we don't go through the committee process. The Finance Committee is willing to work on a budget. We haven't seen a budget. We haven't even talked about it. We've seen some tax reforms that don't make a lot of sense. We get actuarials. The actuarials say, it doesn't work. The end game doesn't work. You get a short-term gain, and then down the road, you're $800 million in the hole. What is this? When are we going to get serious? We got 10 days left. When are we going to get serious about working on a budget? Are we going to continue to run these preposterous shams? Mr. President, I'm insulted. I would suggest that you put a stop to this. This is a process of being in the Senate that I was certainly proud to be. But right now, I don't feel good about being a senator.
Further discussion, the Senator from Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the majority leader yield? The proponent of the amendment?
Does the Senator yield? Senator does yield.
Senator, would you agree with me that today is day 49 of the session?
Yes.
And I'm not on the Finance Committee. As I understand that your amendment did not originate in the Finance Committee, am I right about that?
No, this was the language from the governor's letter that he sent to the Senate and to the House on March 21st.
I got that earlier. I mean, did it come out of the Finance Committee, because I'm not on that committee?
It did not.
Is it endorsed by the chair of the Finance Committee, to your knowledge?
I don't want to speak for him.
I'll get to him next then. He may possibly be supportive of this?
I'm not going to speak for him.
All right, well, I mean, if this is real and we're on day 49, then I'm going to ask you the real questions because it's your amendment. Do you favor the 6.25 sales tax?
I don't favor any of the items in this proposal. As I stated in the beginning, when I offered the amendment, it's an opportunity for everybody in this body to weigh in on the governor's proposed plan.
Do you favor increasing the cigarette taxes per pack to $1.70?
To my friend, I've already indicated that I don't support any of the measures in this proposal.
Well, I mean, it's your amendment. I don't know how you guys do it in those other committees, but I'm on Judiciary we were there till midnight the other night, so we work real hard and we take our job very seriously, so I'll take that as a no. Do you support the 1 cent per ounce on each bottled sugary soft drink?
As I've said before, that's one of the items in this list, and I don't support any of them.
You don't support that either? Do you support any tax on sugary soft drinks?
No, sir.
Let me ask you this. Professional services, I think, are something that we're thinking about taxing. Is that right?
When you say we,
As a body, that's been considered by one or more of our committees.
it has.
Are physical therapists or physicians or other healthcare providers, are they excluded based on your understanding from passing along that sales or service tax, if you know?
Medical professionals are not under consideration in any bill that's before us right now.
Why is that?
I don't know the reason for the introduced version of the bill or any subsequent changes, but I have questioned the ability to tax medical professionals when their reimbursements are coming from insurance companies. So I don't know how you would tax a rate that's predetermined by an insurance company or by the state or federal government.
Well, I think you could easily do that. You just figure out what services were paid for, just like as a lawyer will be the case with me, and then you remit the 7 or 11, 12, 15%, whatever you want to put on it. I mean, tell me why healthcare services are excluded from this. I don't understand that.
Well, in your example of your legal services, your rates aren't predetermined by an insurance company and reimbursed by an insurance company or by the state or federal government.
That's like saying we can't put the egg back in the chicken. I don't know what that means.
Well, if I could, how would you suggest that? Who would you suggest pay the taxes in that scenario?
This is a consumer-based tax, so I can answer that one for you. It's a consumer-based tax, so it's always passed along to the consumers.
But the consumers are paying for the insurance. Insurance are reimbursing for those services. A little bit different scenario. I think you'd have to agree.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Further discussion. The senior senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator from Ohio yield?
Senator does yield.
Let me draw it up here, Senator. My question is, yesterday the House Republican leadership and the Democratic caucuses of both chambers actually caucused with the governor to have conversations, and Metro News reported yesterday that budget talks appear to be picking up the pace at the state capitol Monday evening. House Republican leadership and then Democrats from both houses met with Governor Jim Justice back-to-back. All sides suggested more progress has been made at this point, but no immediate agreement. Matter of fact, as you know, the Senate President asked that the Judiciary Committee and the Finance Committee recess so that we could meet with the governor. My question to you is, where's the Senate Republican leadership in those conversations? It seems like the House Republican leadership is meeting with them. Both the Democratic caucus of the House and the Democratic caucus of the Senate, but no mention of Senate Republican leadership. Where are you?
Well, I will say that I believe, it's my understanding that you all were invited by the governor to meet with him. We didn't receive such an invitation, but when we did earlier in the session, prior to the Democratic caucus meeting with the governor, the Republican caucus of the Senate met with him on multiple occasions, and I have said, as well as many members of this caucus have said, we are fully willing to continue to discuss with the governor and negotiate any compromise that he might be willing to do. The response that I've repeatedly gotten back, and I've heard in the media and elsewhere, is that the governor is willing to compromise to the extent that we will accept his plan.
So you're saying that you all were not invited?
Well, to the senator, just so we're clear, we're on the amendment.
Absolutely. Well, this has to do with the amendment, because
The governor's
what I'm trying to get down to because the idea here is this is not the updated version of negotiations that's going on between the House Republican leadership with the Democratic caucuses. And surely I would think that I'm just trying to find out the senator where he's gotten this version, because this is old news. I mean, this is last week's newspaper. So I'm trying to ascertain where you're getting this and why you're presenting this as the governor's package.
Well,
are you all part of the negotiations now or not?
I have not personally had a conversation in the last 2 days with the governor about any changes he's proposing. I mean, it seems to me he's negotiating with himself at times. He had introduced one budget a week or so later, put out a second budget before any body of the legislature had even had a chance to discuss that with him. And so all I can do is act upon the governor's proposal that he sent to both the House and the Senate on March 21st in this letter. This is the only official word that we've gotten from the governor. Whatever is being reported in the media, I don't think anyone can say is an official position of the governor. If he has an official position, we'll wait to receive a follow-up letter from him as we have in the past.
Senator, all due respect, this looks like a political stunt, and it's kind of cheap.
Well, if you think it's a political stunt to have everyone weigh in on how they feel about the governor's proposed tax increases, then that's your feeling. But to me, I don't think there's anything wrong with having the members of this body state their feelings on the governor's proposal.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
President,
Senator may proceed.
You know-
Wish to speak to the amendment?
I do. I want to speak to the
Senator may
amendment and
proceed.
also the process and the intent.
Senator
You know,
may speak to the
So
amendment.
I just, Mr. President, you know, it's late in the session. We got a lot of work to do. Still, there's no budget. And we're running out of time. And this is serious matters, and we need to be serious about this. And political stunts like this, because of personalities, Mr. President, are you... I'll wait till you're finished, Mr. President.
I'm all
Thank
ears.
you, because we're supposed to address you, Mr. President, and when you're preoccupied, I didn't want to talk to...
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You know, I'm really concerned about the fact that the Republican leadership has not been part of these negotiations. It seems like everybody else has. I have heard, Mr. President, that you have talked with the governor. I don't know about your majority leader, but this seems like a political stunt. And I'm very concerned about the process in the sense that we're coming up to the end here and we have to get a budget. And I think there's been progress. By having these types of stunts on the floor, I think cheapens the process and does a disservice to the people of West Virginia. I would hope under your leadership, Mr. President, that you start getting your folks underlined, particularly your majority leader, providing these political stunts. I understand he must be personally offended by maybe some things that have been in the past, and his emotions are coming out on this amendment. But he's misrepresenting this amendment as the governor's plan, and that's not the case today. The governor has indicated that he's open to negotiations, to talk about getting a budget. This was the governor's proposal several days ago, if not weeks ago. We've come a long way since then, and I would hope, Mr. President, that you and your leadership team will join in those negotiations so that we can get this budget done. I hope that you all don't continue to hold out because everybody else seems to be coming together except for the Senate Republicans, and that would be unfortunate if we don't get a budget at the end of this session because of the Senate Republicans holding out and playing cheap tricks and games like this.
Further discussion? Further discussion? The senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I'm going to rise today. I don't care about this amendment. You know what I am, though, is I do care about the Senate, and I do care about our state. And, you know, this reminds me a lot of last year. Last year, we had the same thing. Didn't see a budget, didn't hear a budget until 3 days before we were done. There it was, didn't pass anything. And then we were here for another 30 days. And we know about that budget that people tried to shove in here last year. It was unconstitutional. So here we are again, playing petty political games. People's jobs are at risk. The future of our state's at risk.
Now, we may catch each other up on a vote on the board sometimes. You got to stick by your votes. Everybody calls for a vote on an amendment, or all the bills get voted on up there. But, what's this in retaliation for? It's not like we as Democrats have been able to stop anything, to form anything. It's only by the good graces of some of you over there that we then any say in anything. But here we are with a piece of paper that is so old that just looking down the list, the governor has changed about every number on here. Some less, some new, some different. But yet we're going to take up our time here at 3:30, and being somebody who, works very hard for the chairman of the judiciary, we're here every night, sometimes for 18 hours a day. And here we've got a piece of paper that the Finance Committee hasn't even looked at. We should be embarrassed, all of us. All of us, that this is what we've reached down and become, is a bunch of petty players of games. I hope you're as embarrassed as I am. I hope you feel as bad for our state as I do, because this accomplishes absolutely nothing except divides us further, creates that unbridgeable gap. When the time comes that we got to join together and do the right thing, I don't think we'll be there. Thank you.
Further discussion. The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm pretty well known around here for being a plain talker. And, this amendment needs to be voted on. When the proper time comes, I request the yeas and the nays. I don't want to hear about wasting time. I have personally witnessed in this chamber and in the committee rooms plenty of time being wasted. That's an insult. The next insult to the Senate is we haven't been invited. The Senate itself was not invited in any of these negotiations that seem to be going on. So apparently we're on our own, Mr. President. And if we're on our own, then we figure our way through the budget. Your leadership has been guiding us there to a 4055 budget. We need to know what the revenue measures are going to be. I frankly don't care whether this is the governor's original proposal, the middle proposal, the next proposal, or the one that whatever happened yesterday that we're not quite sure of. But what this does is allow us to gauge where our members are in the Senate on revenue measures, which, by the way, we need for a budget. We need to be able to understand that, on what's going on in this chamber and whether we're able to provide that. So if you're in favor of increased revenue measures, as the governor has proposed time and time again, now's the opportunity to make that vote. Don't hide from it. Embrace it. I get a little bit irritated for a multitude of reasons. The governor's black vehicle's parked out here. This week it's been twice. You told me absentee and a waste of time? That gets to me. I was optimistic about where we could go to help this state this year. And yeah, you're right about one thing. The governor didn't campaign on these revenue measures. But they are before us today, and we're traveling down the legislative process. You don't have to like it, minority. I've been there. I've been in the minority and been rolled over top of, I don't know, countless times. I'm so calloused, it's not funny. But I don't behave that way as I'm running the chairing the Committee on Government Organization. It is not the majority's committee, it's not the minority's committee, it is West Virginia's committee, and I've tried to behave that way. And the members on that committee know that. Back to the amendment, and forgive me for traveling off the course there a little bit, but sometimes I just get excited. I sit over here and I try to be reserved and not too passionate about things, because I actually like everybody in this room. In this chamber is a better way of putting it. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with putting this to a vote. Nothing. Mr. President, we can't get here soon enough, and this is not a waste of time. I'm only disappointed from the standpoint that if we're scared of taking votes, if you've noticed that my hand has went up every time when, what's the motion on how many people that needed to, yeah, yeas and nays has been requested. Is it sustained? I think everybody knows my hand goes up every time. This is nothing more than another bill that is a vote. Let's make that vote, Mr. President. Thank you.
Further discussion. The senator from Upshur.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, in terms of political stunt and all of that, I don't really know. But I did want to just talk briefly, because we're talking about what I think is the governor's, if not most recent proposal, one of his proposals. And I had a lot of people ask me after the last election, you know, what did I think, with this governor, et cetera, et cetera. And I honestly, from day one after the election, said, I'm very optimistic. I'm looking forward to working with this governor. He comes from a background that I could respect in terms of being a business guy, and obviously quite a successful guy in business in most respects. And so from November on, I was telling people, when they would ask me, what do I think is coming? I said, I'm looking forward to it. I think maybe we're going to be able to work with this guy. And as you're well aware, before the regular session started, the leadership of this body, along with myself being invited in position...
What purpose does the senator from Wayne seek recognition?
Talking about the bill, he's talking about the governor.
I'm speaking to the amendment. I'm getting to where I'm at on the amendment and this particular proposal, so I'd appreciate
the gentleman, the point is not well taken. I'll allow some more leeway here.
Thank you, Mr. President. And so what I'm getting at is how this amendment came into being, I think, and in terms of the appropriateness of trying to amend here, and that is simply that as we've gone through this process, I've been very optimistic at the governor's possible proposals. We met with the governor before the session began. I came away from that very optimistic, expecting to find a governor that would put forth things that we could work with in a very straightforward manner. And after that meeting, I was even more excited by the possibilities. And then we had various plans be presented. And I can tell you, as a guy who has chaired the Tax Reform Committee, there have been various plans that have been presented in the Tax Reform Committee. And I can look right now and see they're in the system. They're publicly available to everybody to see out there. And so I do want to touch a little bit on this amendment from the perspective of this is the best we have. This is the only plan that I'm aware of that's actually officially in the record. We've gone down through a process in tax reform where we move from one to the other, and there have been a number of changes. I understand that. It's a dynamic world and a dynamic system. But how can we work on any amendment that we don't have before us? This is the only thing the governor has proposed that we're all aware of that's officially in the record. And of course he may change his stance on things, and maybe this is not his latest preference. But if he has a different preference, I would like to know about it. I've been wanting to work with this governor from the beginning. If this is the best and most recent thing he has to offer, it's the only thing I can see that we can act on. Now, I don't support a lot of what's in this amendment, However, how can we work with anything other than this amendment? I don't know what else we can work with. He hasn't presented us with anything more recent other than what's in the press. And one paper, and I can tell you because they do it with me as well, one paper says the governor wants this, and another paper says the governor wants that. They don't even coincide. And so I don't think we can take third-party recommendations for it. I think we have to simply look at what he's given us. And I can't support this amendment as it currently is. I wish the governor would come up with something more current if this is not his best proposal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Senator from... Are there others desiring to speak to the amendment before I recognize the senator from Boone?
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, this is, I've already thrown it in the trash, actually. But this amendment basically is just a little piece of what the governor has recommended. And to my knowledge, he wants to, first of all, he realizes there has to be some revenue raised so that we don't continue to raid the rainy day fund and that we continue to lose our bond rating. We all know that this budget over the past 3 or 4 years has had dramatic cuts done to it. And people are suffering because of that. There's child protective service workers that are overwhelmed with workloads. We don't pay those social workers hardly anything. We don't pay our teachers hardly anything. From what I've seen of the more recent governor's proposal, is that everybody has to play as far as contributing to the revenue, including the rich man, including a little hit on the businesses. And so this amendment really is just taking kind of the most dramatic things. In fact, some of them are things that I've recommended. The governor is trying to balance and stabilize the budget. He's also trying to grow and diversify the economy by fixing the roads, bonding the roads. And yes, he's even trying to bend the health cost curve, which we all know about, Medicaid costs, by raising the tobacco tax a little bit and by raising the sugary sweetened tax a little bit. Not as dramatic as this right here, obviously. So I applaud him. I think taking the entire, this small piece of old news budget out of context and putting 34 members voting red here and saying, you know, hey man, nobody wants tax increases. Nobody wants these tax increases, but the reality is we have to have some revenue. And so thank goodness that we continue to move forward. We have to move forward on this. And we have to do it, you know, with, again, the House and the Senate. I don't think we can get too entrenched. And if we do, we're going to be up here late, you know, and again in a bad situation. So I applaud him for trying to be as easy on everyone, business, etc. What I have seen, though, and it hurts me because I represent people that are on fixed incomes, is it seems that all of these tax reform bills comes through here have to do with lessening the burden on the more well-to-do people and increasing the burden on the people less apt to be able to pay the tax, such as consumption, etc. So I am also against this amendment.
Further discussion? Others wishing to speak to the amendment the first time? The senator from Marion wish to comment again.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I appreciate the senator from the 15th's passion. I can remember when he was on my finance committee and he raised his hand and asked a question and he said, hey, can I ask a second one? I said, certainly, you can ask as many as you want. I believe that, I certainly have offered you every courtesy to ask a question, to make an amendment, and I never prohibited one time. I think you'll agree with that. That's not a question, but I'm going to speak to the amendment. Thank you. Well, I don't think I'm the exception. I'm just, I was elected to do a job, and, I come down here and, I get here early and stay late, work hard. You hope that you can get something accomplished. And I know the issues are hard, and I know that sometimes we box ourselves in and it's difficult to get out. But, when I look at this amendment, this is not the governor's amendment. This is probably his first proposal. There's been several since then. I hope that everybody's eyes are glared over red now, and I want to see it reflected on that board when it's time to vote, to make sure that we all vote no against this amendment, because I don't know whose it is. I guess it's the majority leader's amendment. It's not the governor's amendment. We have a committee process that we go through, and, I hold that quite sacred. I think that the work is done in the committee rooms, and I've stressed at the beginning of the session, I know to my members, we try to keep them informed of what's going on. We don't have the votes. The majority controls this Senate. They control the House. You folks can do anything you want to. You don't need us. We just try to glean through the legislation and try to point out, the erroneous information that's in it, or some things that we can make better, and we just try to be a part of the process. I don't consider any debate in any committee a waste of time. I don't think there's anything as a stupid question. I've been an educator all my life. I've heard every excuse, every question in the book, and every one of them are relevant. If you can read between the lines, you can get to the crux of the problems. We talk about the governor being here 2 days this week. Well, in my estimation, Monday, Tuesday, he's got perfect attendance this week, the way I see it. I just think, after all the theatrics are over and, everybody's had their say, I think we need to get down. And I think, Mr. President, if I were the leader of any group, I would impose myself on whoever is making the decisions. And in the case, the governor's going to have the final say. When we present him a budget, he's either going to accept it or veto it. I'd want to be a part of that process. I'd be ashamed to stand on this floor and sit in my seat and say, well, I'm not going to work on a budget till the governor invites me down. I'd be on his doorstep every day. We've got to put a budget together. Let's get to work. It seems to me that the Speaker of the House has already made that concession, that he wants to work. I know that there are folks that don't believe that we should have any new taxes, that we have government out of control, but in the process of getting to where you got to go, you've got to pare down somewhat. You've got to incrementally work to reach your goals. And I think the Speaker has reached out to the governor. I just hope that, Mr. President, you would reach out and let's get together and let's sit down, work in this in a sensible way. But as far as this amendment, this is not the governor's amendment. I would certainly encourage all my caucus to vote no, vote red, and let's put this thing to sleep. And let's put the theatrics to sleep, and let's get down to business.
Further discussion before I recognize the senator from Ohio to close debate. Senator from Ohio to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate all the comments in the room today. I think it's actually been a very valuable use of our time to hear everyone's positions and thoughts. And I'm sorry if some people feel like this is a political stunt. What I would call a political stunt is the red light on in the top of the Capitol Dome, or having a press conference to invite members down and leaving 15 minutes later, or hanging flyers in the bathroom outside the Senate. I would consider those to be political stunts. But what we're doing here today is engaging the interest of the members of this body on what is, without a doubt, you can spin it any way you want, but this is without a doubt the governor's most recent version of his tax increase proposal that he sent to you, Mr. Speaker, or to you, Mr. President, and the Speaker of the House on March 21st. I appreciate that the governor has continued negotiations, but that doesn't constitute a more recent proposal. This is the most recent proposal, so this will be an opportunity for everyone in the room to let the governor know and to let all of us know here as we move forward what your feelings are on the governor's most recent proposal for the budget. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment as offered by the senator from Ohio. The yeas and nays have been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. All those in favor of the gentleman's amendment will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 0 yeas, 32 nays, 2 absent and not voting, less than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the amendment rejected. Further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.